Hey guys, we are going to look at kind of how do we work with radicals versus exponents. Remember, radicals look like this. And exponents, of course, are talking about a number that lives up in here. And so we're going to work on converting between those two and how we make that work. So as we dive into this, I'm going to show you two different ways that we'll really kind of go about it. The first way is, how do we do it when we're dealing with variables? Because variables are their own unique beast, but actually in this case, they're not as bad as we might think they are. So for variables, we're going to see something like this. We're going to have an x, and it's going to have an exponent. And then out here, we're going to have the letter I. And I stands for index. And just a couple of wrinkles for you. Before we do that, we're going to talk a lot about E over I, or EOI. All that means is to change it. We put the exponent over the index. Okay, so the exponent goes on top, like E over I, E-I-E-I-O, whatever you want to say, but E on top, I underneath. So EOI, exponent over index. And so as we're changing stuff, that's kind of what we want to be watching for. We want to keep our exponent up high, and our index is going to go down low. Now, in some of these problems, we're going to have a couple of wrinkles. And one of them is if there's no I, right, there's no I in team. Well, if there's no I in your radical, you're going to use a 2. It's not like having a square root. Square roots don't have numbers right there, but we pretend that there's a 2. If there's no exponent, that means we're going to use a 1. Okay, so if I took you through a couple examples here real quick. Here's what we're looking for. So here's our first one. So I've got x to the 3 over 7. So E over I, E is 3. So I'm going to set up a blank radical. I'm going to put my variable underneath, and then I'm going to assign 3 and 7 to their home. So E is 3, which means it's x to the 3rd, and we're taking the 7th root. So E over I. If I go the other way, something like this, I'm going to set it up. I'm going to have x, and I'm going to raise x up to a power. And that power is going to be a fraction. It's going to be E over I. Be careful, there is no E in this problem, and so what we're doing is we're assigning a 1 to that spot. Okay, here's another one. And I probably shouldn't have written that 2 right away, so let's get rid of that. We're just given this, but we know that when there's no index, there's a 2. So I guess we probably were okay to write it right away. I just was really excited, I guess. Okay, if in this very last one, we're going to take a deep dive into this one. If I'm looking at x like this, there is no E, so I know that's a 1. And there is no I, so like that problem we just did, I know that's a 2. And so when I go to E over I this, it's a little weird, but it equals x to the 1/2. So if you see square root, that is the same as x to the 1/2. Okay? So like I said, some pretty neat stuff happening here. Now we have a whole other box that we want to be able to dive into. So I'm going to do some scrolling here. Remember, if you didn't see that, maybe push pause, go back, breathe, write, pause, regroup, grab a snack, whatever you need to do before we dive into how do we do this for numbers. Okay. So first of all, one thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to use the powers table. So we wrote all those powers in that table. but we're going to probably do some of it in reverse, right? We're going to look for the big number and work backwards to figure out what the original number is. So have that powers table open in front of you. I think that'll be super helpful. However, if it's not in the powers table, we can solve any radical using a calculator. What we'll do is we'll use the exponent key on your calculator. It looks kind of like a caret. You know how sometimes they tell you to use Shift 6 to get that little caret? There's a button like that on your calculator. It's definitely going to come in handy. Because we're going to use that exponents to solve some radicals. So here's what I mean by that. If I have a number and I'm supposed to take some power of that number, I can go to my calculator and I type the number in, and then I raise it up to the 1 over I. Okay, so if I'm looking at this as an example, let's look at this one. This is definitely one where I'm just going to go right to my table. I'm going to say, fourth root, let me check my table. Oh, yeah, I see 6,561. It's 9. But all of a sudden, let's say in the next problem, I get a fifth root. Well, fifth roots aren't in my table. Now, I might be able to make an educated guess, but here's my other option. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take that number, then I'm going to hit that caret key on my calculator, and I'm going to raise it to the 1/5. I'm going to put the index underneath. And when I do that, I get 5. And then if we were feeling really crazy and all of a sudden this problem asked us to do the 11th root, we would be fine. We would be okay. We could do it. We would go to our calculator. Right, we're not trying to do that in our head. And we'd take 2,048 and we'd raise it up to the 1 over 11. And we'd be really careful when we put that in, and we might have to use some parentheses and experiment with how your calculator best operates. But when we do that, we would get a very boring answer of 2. So being able to use our calculator for some of those exponents is going to come in handy. And so just be mindful of making sure you can use yours in a way that gets you the right answer, right? If you don't have a calculator, if you need help getting one, there is a graphing calculator available for your Chromebook. And I'd love to show you how to get that. So please let me know what questions you have or if you need help with that. Otherwise, you got this.